Welcome, guys, to another episode. It's not really another episode. It's just us talking on Zoom because that's just what we do. But I am your host, Nick Slowiak, and I am joined with Richie and Earl of Image.
How are you?
How you doing?
We're
Thanks
good. We're great. How are you guys?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Things are good.
Ready for the season to start.
Yeah, ready for it to warm up, huh? And tell me where you guys are both located right now?
Baltimore,
Yeah.
Maryland.
Oh, so it's totally like 80 degrees there.
Oh,
East Coast is nice.
fruit trees, citrus trees. Yeah, it's beautiful right now.
I'm still wearing shorts. It doesn't matter. I got yelled at today by some old man in a liquor store about it. So
I feel like you're being serious though.
Totally serious.
You're being serious. Yeah. I would like to do that. Well, let's jump into it. You guys, well, let's just say you are Image. Image, for a lot of people, probably is a name that's not very well known if we're talking about kids that are involved in tournament paintball today. But for myself, who's a little bit older, and a couple other people, it is a name that holds some reverence. So let's hear you guys, and let's hear from you guys, and let's talk about what Team Image is.
Well, Team Image started back in '95. I was myself, my brother played with the All-Americans, and we were just kind of fed up with the direction of their team and the way they were doing stuff. Not that it was wrong, but they had different plans. So we decided just to regroup and find the local talent that we could, and we started putting a team together. That spawned into picking up players, notable guys like Brian Fowl, Andy Copcock, Lane. We had a who's who of players on our squad, which then it turned into, instead of being like an arms race, we turned paintball into this. You got to grab the players that are available before they get a home or find somewhere that works for them. And we missed out on a lot of guys that played, back in the day. One of the guys that were available, back when it was washing the rain was JR. John was one of the best players out there, but nobody really knew about him until he joined Avalanche. And, he was also the silent guy on Avalanche, but he did a lot of work. He might have did most of the work, but, they were a good team. But as you're building the squad, you only have so much room for the personnel, and you only have so much capital to keep that moving. And that was always the Achilles heel for Image was the funding, was the travel schedule, and it's a lot of money to get out there and do all the events back then, and even more so now, depending on what you go into and which events you play and choose to participate in. But then, things changed as the game evolved through the years, and you had X-Ball and all this stuff happening. The team faded out. It was just it fizzled out to an extent due to funding. It wasn't a lack of passion. The guys that were still there were doing. Lane was running at a time. Opie and LB were like the committee that kept the team together. But once we started leaking, and we couldn't fix that leak, and just didn't work out. I left. I ended up, back then there was two leagues. You had the 7-man league, and you had PSP and NPPL, and everybody knew, you had a lot of paintball being played during that time frame in 2003, 2004. And I remember playing with Aftershock at the first NXL, and I ended up quitting at that event and kind of leaving those guys high and dry due to I was actually watching these guys play. They came to LA as Twisted Image, so it was cool to watch these kids that refed at my field and hung out in my store and all that nonsense. So we were watching the game, and they were playing Shock Tech. So the winner of this match goes on to the finals. And back then it was round robin, whatever. So you have to accumulate the most points, and then you move on. But I had half the Aftershock bench watching the game. I was cocky because I'm like, oh, we're gonna pound you guys into the ground, like just probably had a few cocktails in me. But as the game the game unfolded, one of the guys from Shock started coaching from the sideline, which wasn't permitted back then. You could do it in X ball, you could do it in certain things, but you could not do it in the 10-man format. And I lost my shit. And I threw
Rightfully so.
yeah, I was like, dude, shut the fuck up. Let him play. Let him play the game. Not my fault you guys are getting your shit pushed in. Like, it is what it is. But they, it was just random, like joystick. Like, oh, he's coming, he's coming, he's coming, he's coming. Look up, look left, look left. And it just, as we were trying to close the game, everybody was getting blinked out. And, one of my best friends was on the team at the time, and he was like practically in tears, like, dude, what, tell your teammates to shut up. Like, we were winning the game. And that just, I blew a gasket and I quit. I ended up throwing a drink in Billy's face, walked up to Rennick, told Rennick I'm done. And that was the last days of my X-ball. And I joined these guys. And then when I joined these guys, they gave me a home. We played a couple 10-man events back in the day. And then it drifted into the 7-man league because we were, we had a really good squad of young talent that we just it had to be put together. And it was just, we were trying to find that togetherness back then, which was tough because it was, again, funding and trying to get to these events that are, across the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting part is I came up looking up to those guys, watching what they did. We started Twisted Image, which is who he's talking about. And once we got Richie on the squad, we cut it down with the 7, and then we got really competitive in the first pro tournament. Because you could just enter pro back then. So we just decided,
it's true.
Let's just enter pro as our first 7-man tournament. And in that tournament, we beat Dynasty in the prelims, and then went all the way and played them in the finals and took second. So we were like, oh, we can really do this. Unfortunately, we only had that team together for a short bit of time before we joined Bad Company. Too many people on the squad for a year, and we left again, and we formed Influence with the same image squad. And played Honeycomb Super 7 and took second to the Ironmen in semi-pro there. And then we did it for half that season, and then we all kind of faded. So that was like I would say, how it all kind of fell off. But like we were really competitive then, but we just all decided to go our separate ways until Tim Montrester brought it all back, and Richie was playing on a competing squad against Tommy and I's kind of throw together image squad. And took a couple years to get Richie back in the mix with the original group. And then that's pretty much the current core of the image squad now, was that 7-man squad with a couple young players of new talent. And we've been building on and tweaking that 10-man team for the last, like I would say, 4 to 5 years to actually get highly competitive. And we were just missing a few pieces. And that's why we're really looking forward to the new season now. I think we've put it all together, and we're a group of guys who've been playing together for almost 15, 20 years.
I mean, that's kind of incredible to go, Richie, from Image and back in '95 when you said the team started to playing with your brothers, and you listed off a whole host of names of legendary paintball players that came. I don't know, they could to really break down where they all came from, but some came from legendary teams or somewhat known teams that were novice and or pro or amateur, because I don't even think there were technically a novice division then. If you're bringing up JR and LB and Lane and Opie to be on Image, because you guys had a whole host of guys that I would consider to be legendary. And and a lot of those guys went all over the place.
Yep. You're right. I mean, and they started, you look at some of the core members of, Avalanche, and then, Infamous, Lee, Travis, Andy, those guys went and carried their passion in that direction.
Trauma,
the guys, they did their thing. So yeah, Image had a pretty big influence and stamp of paintball growth at that time, because of the people that we had from various parts of the country. Rob from North Carolina. Those guys were in out in Cali and out west, and then you had the guys from Atlanta. So, and then you had the local guys from Baltimore.
Right. Big shoes to definitely big shoes to fill.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, it would seem like that probably is it's a testament to the team, because it's not an easy feat to have a bunch of guys from all around the country together and to keep them together and keep them happy. But at the same time, that's probably your biggest hurdle, right? Because you're just not together all the time. like a lot of these other teams were, just being at the local field every weekend and
Correct.
playing. And a lot of those names are some very strong-willed, strong personality individuals. And
For sure. And people, there was a lot of skepticism back in the day. Everybody's like, "Oh, you're not going to be able to get it to work or gel or whatever." And it worked out fine because as you had to be almost perfect in your gameplay back then because the points, the way everything was structured, to where if you slipped up on one of those high-end amateur teams, potentially could put you out of the tournament. You know what I mean? And that's the difference between like the 10-man format and the NXL is you get to run it back you got however many minutes to keep running points back, however it ends, but the score might be 4-5 or whatever. But in 10-man, you get a bad call and you lose that game, you lose that 100 points. That could be a nail in a coffin for your weekend potentially. So you be on your A game all the way through and trying to calculate and make sure you don't slip up and walking the fields. We spent 2.5, 3 hours in Chicago. The sun, they were closing the park. They're like, you guys, you got to go. Like, we're closing down. We're like, oh, give us 20 more minutes, friend. Like, we're trying to figure it out, but it helped. You know what I mean? It's one of the things that helped us, come out on top of that event. So,
yeah, that's probably a lost art. Like, in no way would you ever have to walk multiple fields, be it just woods ball fields, to then sup air hyperball fields that no matter where you went across the country were never the same.
correct.
And they changed almost every year, right? There are little tweaks made by the field or the promoter.
Or little builder bears that happen to show up like right before the event. And you're like, where did this come from? This is new. What happened here?
Well, you might be part of that. I think
field imaging. We call that field imaging.
I think if you ask around, that's part of the notoriety of the image name is you'd be walking a field one morning and by the afternoon the field would look a little bit different.
It's not true.
So I think we pride ourselves. Well, at least Tommy and Richie bringing us up, we pride ourselves on like we strategically probably spend more time walking fields than doing anything else. And you also build it around the schedule, right? So I don't think there's ever a tournament where the sun isn't going down on us and we still have another field to walk. So you have to plan it around that. And it's usually you're walking fields the whole tournament if you're playing on Sunday.
So speaking of manipulating the fields, I have a funny story.
Yes.
And this is with the All-Americans. I wasn't there. It was in England. But my brothers were both on the team at the time, and they had whatever squad was over there, the Adams, Billies, Tui, and they made it into the finals where they were doing the same thing, walking fields, this, that, and the other. But on the outside of the boundary tape, there was this huge uprooted tree stump. I mean, when you say huge, it's a mound of dirt and a nub. Well, they somehow rolled this thing inbounds, put it in play, like right on the 50-yard line, on one of the tapes, and then took paintballs, broke paint all over it to make it look like it was in play, threw some broken paint tubes in there. And even the refs came out and they're scratching their head. They're like, man, what is this thing out here? But they made a play to take that bunker that wasn't there. And I think they ended up playing like the UK Preds or something on that field. And then at the end of the game, they're like, what is, everybody was bitching because they knew that wasn't part of the field. But who's going to move a 2-ton stump? It's almost unheard of.
Hey, those guys over there.
Yeah.
And
masks.
Those guys from America. Sons of bitches, dude.
Yeah, we made friends over there all the time, for sure.
Oh, I can't imagine. That I can't imagine. I mean, yeah, we can get into that another time. We don't need to talk about the Euros. Okay, so twisted image. So I don't know, man. It's crazy to think about how intertwined you guys were, and especially Richie with your history and going from image. Was it going from image to aftershock, or was there anything else in between there?
Just aftershock.
Okay, and then 2003, 2004. Like you said, there were some shenanigans on the sideline. I would love to have seen Billy taking a glass to the face.
I think that's why I take the judo arts now, or Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, well, I can attest to that. He takes that very seriously.
Like, yeah, let's do that one more time. Let's run that one back.
Okay, so now you joined together. at the end, or you joined Twisted Image at the end of that. And Earl, as you were saying, the team has evolved, like say ebbed and flowed with just life, right? Guys come together, you fall apart, new team name, different group of guys, same group of guys. But now you guys have been together, what you said, like the last 3-4 years?
Yeah, I would say about 4 years. I mean, we had iterations of, I'd say 3 or 4 of us at times playing the ICC when it was like really growing. We've all been playing tournaments here and there. You know, if you look at us, we're classified as D4, a lot of us, so we can kind of play local tournaments, even though we're former like
Sandbag or
Yeah, big sandbags.
But I mean, we're not that effective in 5-man, especially at our size. But either way, you got what happened during those years was we were really feeling out how many people wanted to recommit, right? Like what is it into committing to this mech scene? Is it going to grow? Is it going to be sustainable? So we even passed on the ICPL for the first year or two. And then eventually we said, hey, look, we're really competitive in this. Why don't we just commit for that year? And so that was probably about 3 years ago where we all took it seriously. We got 7 to 8 of the core guys involved. And then we've probably been rotating the last, 3 or 4 guys on the roster, feeling out the right fits. And it really took us till probably last year to identify the pieces. So yeah, I mean, we've got commitment and buy-in from all the guys this year. And I think we're going to play more paintball than we ever have. We started playing some of the NXL again in the mech scenario parts. But I think if you ask some of the guys, they would probably pay X-Ball, and we have some X-Ball players on the squad. Not as many as some of the teams, but that is something we honor and we think about doing once in a while. But 5-man versus 10-man, there's a big difference in the style of play, as you know, Nick. And it's just a huge commitment. I mean, I think everyone would love to play paintball year round, but doing both the mech scene and the NXL scene, it's such a commitment for people with real lives, real families. So you can only ask those guys of so much. So we've decided to commit to the mech scene just because we think we're going to be more successful at that.
Oh, I agree. And it's crazy now too. You say that because I mean, mechanical and or 10-man is a year-long commitment. Like there's events starting in the beginning of the year all the way to the end. There might be more 10-man events than there are really 5-man NXL type tournaments.
At least once a month, and you're basically managing 12 to 15 individuals, and you have a new project every month to organize those individuals, get their finances in order, make sure that you have the right fit of guys.
Yeah.
You don't have a whole team of back guys or a whole team of front guys. And to make sure it's worth it, right? It's hard to justify